Good afternoon. Thank you for the advance applause for our distinguished group of CEOs who have a lot of homework to get through after these 1.5 days. We're going to be talking about how they are navigating multipolarity and how they are preparing, or probably are already prepared, for a new world order. And here with me I have Bill Anderson. He is the CEO of Bayer, and he says that his role is to ensure that we drive top innovation to provide better access to health and increase food security. This is our contribution to stability in light of a shifting world order. With us is Roland Busch. He's the CEO of Siemens. He says navigating multipolarity requires our focus on 3 areas: international cooperation to solve global problems, to mitigate risks through diversification, and to keep our innovative strength. With us is also Emma Marcegaglia. She's the CEO and Chairwoman of Marcegaglia Holding. Among many things, she was also the head of the General Confederation of Italian Industry. She says, as CEO, I absolutely do not believe that globalization is over. There will be undoubtedly a paradigm shift, but shutting ourselves off is not in anyone's interest. And she also calls for very strong European business policies. With us is also Lars-Hendrik Röller, who needs no introduction, of course, the chairman of the Berlin Global Dialogue, economics professor, and as all of us know, for 10 years you were the chief economic advisor to Angela Merkel. So I've spent many years trying to corner him on planes or at events. So it is my particular pleasure to have you on a stage and with a microphone today. He says a new playbook is needed to ensure that the new multipolar order doesn't lead to polarization. That playbook against global disorder should include reform of existing institutions like the World Bank, the IMF, significant funding from richer nations, and for the global south. That's what he's saying. The G20, of course, having pledged $200 billion already. And let's just start us off, and I ask for permission to take a quote from one of those closed-door sessions. Emma, I'd like to start with you. You come from a family company, 60 years old, still global operations that you have, and one quote I was allowed to use is that if you don't want to get into security in this fragmented world, in this new world order, get out of business. Clearly, you're in business. What does a company your size, you have some 60,000 employees, do?
Okay, so first of all, thank you for inviting me. I think this dialogue is really very interesting and very important. So let me just say 2 things. I think of course, now geopolitical risk is very important for us. Probably in the last 30 years, it was not so important. Probably we have lived in Europe in a situation where we thought that we were like free risk. There was inflation was very low, interest rate was very low. The idea was that probably globalization of the market would also lead to integration of the different states. So we were in a situation where probably the geopolitical risk was not our first, let's say, thought. Then, of course, with and we all work to have the maximum efficiency. So where was the place to invest and to produce? China was the cheaper. Let's go to China. Where was the place to buy my raw materials, maybe hot rolled coils? China. Let's go to China. Let's outsource this part of the thing. Where were the cheapest way to have energy? Was Russia. So we all have done this. And then, of course, we realized that during the pandemic first, and then with the war, that we were all relying too much on China and on. So now, what I think a company like my company has to do, first of all, I think it's very important to be the maximum, to have the maximum agility. I don't think we can predict the future. I wish I could. I will be much richer than what I'm kidding, of course. But I think we should be ready to the different scenarios. And And we have to be very agile in adapt to what happened. We don't know what can happen. We can have different scenarios. I heard you saying maybe it's better not to think about the worst scenario, otherwise we will be out of business, but to be agile. So first of all, it's a cultural thing. We have to be very agile. Second, I think we have to do the maximum to diversify. This is what we are doing. Of course, we diversify. We try, because there is a limit in doing that, but we try to diversify other markets, so be more present in different markets. We try also to diversify a lot on sourcing our raw material. We were relying a lot, for example, from Russia and Ukraine before the war. Then we shift completely, and then from China. Then we shift completely to, for example, Vietnam, Korea, Mexico. So you try to diversify as maximum as possible. There's been a lot of discussion here about reshoring or what. My opinion is that reshoring your investment once you have done it is very difficult. It's very costly. So probably maybe the next investment, maybe I will not do in China, maybe I will try to do in other countries, but saying that we will exit China, I don't think it's possible, and probably it doesn't make a lot of sense. And finally, I think also that we have to prepare also our people to know better geopolitical risk, because this will stay. I don't think this will go away in 1 year. So, for example, in our academy, we have an academy where we train our people. The first lesson we have done is geopolitics, not only with the first line people, but also with the second and third line. And I finish saying this, I think, to all CEOs is very clear. We need to de-risk, but de-risking means more cost. So we have to understand how to do it. Is the consumer, are they willing to pay more? So, there is a cost thing that we have to think about it. We have to use more technology. And finally, but probably I think Mr. Kohler will help us, I think also we have to do our own job, but I think also the government and the European Commission has to work with us, otherwise it will be difficult. So probably we need big project to try to diversify where we source our raw material. It will be Africa, we need Kazakhstan, I don't know, but we need to work strongly together. We need, for example, at the level of European Commission and also in state, we need less bureaucracy. We need, this de-risking is costly, it's difficult, so we don't want subsidies or things, but we'd like to have our life simpler, so without stupid bureaucracy that doesn't help us to do this. So, and finally, I think we also would like to have a European Commission to have more FTA. If we have to go and source our raw material, I don't know, from other countries, maybe India, maybe Australia, maybe other countries, maybe we would like to have a free trade agreement where, it's easier for us to go and source. So difficult things, but we'll try to do our own job, but also we need the support from the politics, either at the national level or also at the European level.
So strong call of support there. I'll get to you in a moment, Mr. Röller. Let's turn to Roland Busch. Your company, Siemens, is more than 200 years old.
175.
Oh, okay, that's still pretty good going. It has been a global company pretty much from day one. Actually started in Russia. And what does de-risking mean for you? Does it have to be more expensive? How much opportunity is in de-risking?
Yeah, I think we have to define de-risking in 3 dimensions. Number 1 is the market, in which market we are selling, where we make our revenue. The other dimension is our supply chain, where do we buy? And the third one is technology, because obviously it's a technology, you're depending so much on technology, and you have to think about this one. In particular, in the context of geopolitical tensions, where technology is one of the hot topics, because we believe that there's no political sovereignty without technological sovereignty, and you see that, obviously. Let me start with the first one. And here Siemens has an advantage, being 175 years old. When Werner von Siemens founded the company, he sent one brother, immediately to Russia and another one to London, because he knew that his technology only in Germany would not survive, so he goes global. And so we are present in almost all countries in the world. And for most of them, for more than 100 years. Now comes the sobering math behind it. 24% of revenue United States, 16 Germany. We are a German company indeed. 14% China. And then it's getting small.
14 or 40?
1-4.
Yeah.
So I was sequencing it. And then it's getting very small. India. For 150 years in India, less than roughly 3%. So just to give a reference. So that means diversification, and we tried hard, I have to say. Also Africa, don't even ask for the number, which is very, very small. And I experienced at least 5 different Asia strategies in my board membership of Siemens. So therefore, it is really hard to diversifying, but you have to do that and start working on even harder. So what we did, I mean, we won a huge order in India, another one in Egypt. So we are getting there, but again, it's difficult. And we are not alone. If you start fresh from zero, I think it's even harder. Second dimension, supply chain. Where do we buy? So we studied intensively what is the flow of goods between Europe or Germany and China, China and Europe, and United States and China. Very interesting, which is marginal. So can't even forget it. But then, and which is good news is, since we also have a very strong presence, also in manufacturing and the like. So we have, let's say, United States, China, Europe. It's 85, 87% local for local. So it's a very small portion what we are trading. Still, you have to look, are there parts in there which is single sourcing? Because then it doesn't help, volume doesn't speak. So this is where you have to work on. And coming to your point, this costs. If you have a single source, because of cost reasons, and now you go for double source, obviously this increases your cost. Brings me to technology. This is very difficult because it's out of our control. If you have an export control kicking in, let's give the example of the United States controlling the development of semiconductor business in China. So they are having limitations. We are, by the way, have a very strong software business. We are amongst the largest software companies in the world. Nobody knows that. And but we are also designing semiconductors. We have tools to design semiconductors. So if you get some kind of limitations there, what do you do? And that's a dimension which is to some extent out of our control. What we do is obviously we try to develop also technology local for local. We have 20 R&D hubs in India, 10,000 active patents there, and so on. But when it comes to software, you normally don't want to fork it and develop it twice, just want to scale it. But now we are forced to do something like that, or we are at least thinking about it. So this is the whole dimension. If you ask me, yes, it will increase our cost. This is the reason why I'm saying there's an embedded inflation in our economy, because this diversification, this over-optimization for going incremental investment and wherever it's cheap is over. Yeah. And therefore this embedded, and another embedded inflation is the energy transition, because we are shifting from a CapEx-based system, I mean, build a cheap gas-fired power plant and pay for the gas, to a CapEx-based system. They invest a lot at the beginning, and then the OpEx is basically zero. This means it increases our cost, at least for a while. And that's embedded in our system. We have to take it. This is a price we have to pay, rightfully so, but we have to adapt it. And at the same time, we have to mitigate the risks. So therefore, it's very complex. Very last sentence on it. I mean, to some extent, I love it, because whenever somebody builds a new plant, it's eventually our business, because we are automation and digitalizing plants. And this trend of diversification, what does it mean? It means new greenfield plants, for example, in the United States. If you build a new greenfield plant in the United States in a market which is aging and we have less and less labor, guess what we do? Go as far as possible with automation and digitalization. And that's our play. So I love it.
When you describe this, it looks like a world of opportunity, but we're talking about the multipolarity and also the political fragmentation that we're seeing. So how are you factoring in that risk?
So, I mean, to some extent you can, obviously, and we're preparing for that in this local for local. Local for local is always good, I guess. This is something what you really want to think about it. We cannot do that for all markets, but at least for certain regions. We are very worried about any kind of trading barriers which are increased, because the only thing about, and again, we are ending up, as you said, we are ending up not in a, globalization is not over. Again, no. In contrast, we are ending up in an even more global world. Yeah. Which is fine, which is absolutely fine. But if at the same time we're starting to put up trading barriers, then we have another problem, and we should avoid that. You can start planning for this, that you say, okay, you have to price in, which drives you more into local for local. And again, as you said before, planning for the worst is something which is extremely hard to do. I mean, I said it yesterday evening, these 800-pound gorillas, which are fighting for the #1 position, if that's really getting sour and you have a trade problem, here we're talking about $750 trillion of trade. I mean, if that's impacted, then we have another problem. I don't believe that any risk management gives a good answer to that. So you have to stay tuned and agile and do your homework, whatever you can do.
Bill, Hendrik has spoken before about that that decoupling must not happen. De-risking must not turn into decoupling. How much sleep do you lose over that?
It's a worrying topic because I think there are people talking about the end of globalization. First off, I think that's simplistic. I think there is certainly an era that's ending, and we're passing into a new era. I think there was an era of a sort of an easy monolithic globalization. What I mean by monolithic is you could produce something in one geography and then sell lots of it in some other geography. It was sort of simple, and it was like a race, and it was easy because you could just decide you were going to go into country X next year, and then you could be there, and then you're just selling stuff you're already producing in your home factory, and then okay, maybe you got to open a factory there, but that's not so hard. The simple fact is, if you stop and think about it, there's no decoupling that can happen in any reasonable time frame. I mean, for example, our company, we have 91,000 suppliers in 83 countries, and if we went to say, well, we're going to get out of country X or we're going to get out of country Y, I mean, it's first off, there's no path to actually doing that because the obstacles, you wouldn't want to do it. The first thing you would do, if you said you're going out of country X, that means, so you're going to forego the business opportunity there, you're going to turn your back on the people of that country. That's very challenging. And so obviously in recent, due to recent events, there's been a kind of a big move out of Russia. And that's caused a lot of disruption, but that's a relatively smaller thing than what we're talking about with, say, China. Okay, it's a whole different deal. So you could say that sounds very bleak. Actually, I find hope in it because let's not forget. I know for several decades there was an emphasis on trade as a means to peace. We shouldn't let a tragic development in Eastern Europe dissuade us from the notion that trade can drive peace. We have the West and the East have so much at stake on this in terms of the welfare of the people of every country, and so I think in terms of what we do about it, I think we have to drive forward with two things. We have to be more nimble, as you said. Agility is key because we have to be ready to adapt. We have to be ready if there's a crisis, if there's whether it's a natural disaster or an act of mankind. We have to be ready for that, and we have to have less bureaucratic, more nimble companies. And I think people are waking up to that. I think we also have to take advantage of the opportunity that multipolarity affords to have new voices at the table. For example, we're the world's largest agricultural inputs company. Our number 2 country in the world is Brazil. And we have an opportunity there with more voices at the table to find reason, to find reasonable ways to get over the big obstacles between the giants. And I see multipolarity as an opportunity to solidify the ties that can bind us together, that can prosper the people of the world, and hopefully also be a part of keeping peace.
So Hendrik, we have Emma saying it will get more expensive, we have to factor it in, but we need stronger policies from Europe. We basically have Roland Busch saying it's a question of how you deal with it, and there's a lot of opportunity in this fragmentation as well, as long as you keep it local. And then there's another voice saying it's basically a world of opportunity, which raises the question, why are you so concerned?
No, I'm not concerned, but you might expect that from somebody who's been there in the last 10 years in a different time. We are in favor of trade, in favor of globalization, and multilateralists. And that was, by the way, for Germany, all very, very good. And then there were up and downs on that. We had the financial crisis, we had COVID, and many challenges. But then something more important happened, at least for Germany, and that was, the total, miscalculation on our energy policy with Russia. And, with hindsight, that was not good. And now we have a big debate, and then we have the China story, with the China strategy, and now we're having all these discussions about, which is good, about de-risking and security, and it's being pushed more in other countries than maybe in this country, especially the issue with China. There's bilateral support on that in the United States. And I think all of that is correct, I guess, because obviously there are risks, national security or energy, all kinds of risks, which maybe politics didn't see coming and didn't price into their policies, and we now are starting to do that. And that's why everything is going to be more expensive, because it's not going to come for free. It's going to cost economic growth to some extent. Innovation is the answer then, I guess. And all of that is a good thing. And I don't think that's going to go away either, the way the world is going. And now there's a new word out there, multipolar, which is not multilateralism. I mean, the German Chancellor would have always said multilateralism before. Now it's multipolar, and that is a correct description. And I think now and I think what the Chancellor was, I think, very eloquently saying yesterday in many things. Also the question, by the way, on anti-dumping procedures with China, there was a question on that as well, is how do we deal with that? And my worry is, like always in politics, and now I can say this, is you have to be very careful of not overreacting to certain things. You saw that in the COVID crisis, and maybe companies have the same issue. We didn't have enough masks, then we had too many masks, we didn't have enough injections, then we have... So I think these people who've been always sort of against globalization to some extent for social reasons, which we've had all the time, of course, they're now getting more popular, and the question is how do the politics... So I think when you go through all the trade policy issues, the investment policy issues, the China strategy issues, the voice of business, by the way, is key in all of that. Let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater, and I think that's what you're all saying. And I just hope that this is where we're going. Second point, so you can go all these policies. I think we need to find the right equilibrium, and it's going to be difficult, by the way, between the United States and Europe to agree on many of these things, and even sometimes inside Europe, as President Michel was alluding to yesterday. So that's my concern. But the second point really is that let's not push the confrontation. And there's always, when we were dealing with your former president, Donald Trump, on a potential trade war with Germany, auto tariffs, and we were always, trying to talk to him, which was not very easy, by the way, reason with him and try to, get a sensible solution. And others told me, you guys, he only understands one language, you got to hit him with something. I'm not sure we would have been able to hit the United States with anything, because, Germany is totally dependent on the United States, which is from my
And
point
China.
of view, okay.
Which
But also the United States, but that's okay. I don't think we should de-risk from the United States. But the point is, we can't really. So there was always these two strategies. One is, and this is what my former boss was doing, if I may say this here, trying to cooperate and trying to find a good solution versus being tough. And this is, if you want, let's not confront too much. Let's try to, have a sensible political solution and call it a dialogue or something. Those are two worries. Not going overboard, and the voice of business is important. The second one, let's work with China on certain areas, let's say, and not just confront and escalate and end up in any kinds of economic wars.
I would like to make a comment, because we talk about our, let's say, naivety depending on gas and Russian gas, energy supply, and which is true to some extent. I mean,
I didn't say naivety. I said
no. I said it, but whatever. I mean, maybe people argue in this direction, and we benefited again from it. No, but what's even more crazy is that 90% of the high-performance power chips coming from one place and one country and one company in the world. So, and without those, you can go to your basement, dig out your latest iPad, which there will be no large language models, no data center. So this is a dependency, I would say, which is much more insane. That
Taiwan talking about.
Yes.
Taiwan, TSMC. Yes, this is the one. And the other 10% or 8% coming from South Korea. So.
Okay, but that launches us right into what trade policy should do. And we have here in Germany, for instance, we have individual cases. We have Intel coming to Magdeburg. We have a conversation with companies, and also a German chancellor who said he would continue to do this on a case-by-case basis to create incentives for investment on these key industries. To just juxtapose the United States, you have the CHIPS Act, you have the IRA. So what do you feel more comfortable with, before I take this back to Hendrik? Which is a more viable strategy for you?
So, I mean, if we look at what the United States are doing, first of all, let's say that probably for the first time, the United States decided to have an industrial policy, because before there were more trade war. I mean, Trump started with, with steel, saying for the 232, steel is national security.
Still there, by the way.
It's still there, so we're trying to. So it's not only Trump; it's going on with Biden. So just to say, but anyway, so they at a certain moment they understood that also they rely a lot on China, that they understood very clearly that China wanted to become a big leader on everything, on technology, on geopolitical and that. And so they decided to say, okay, now we want to have industrial policy. And as you know, as you said, the IRA, the CHIPS Act, the Infrastructure Act, and it's a big thing. It's 1 trillion euro. But the interesting, well, there is a problem there, in my opinion, that, as you know, part of it require local content. So you have to go and produce there. You have to have 40% of raw materials there. So it's a little bit
German car makers are very aware of that.
But from a point of view of the business, I think having a clear tax credit on OPEX and on CAPEX, and you know exactly what you will have. And there is no, as the European Union said, well, let's look at this project. Maybe this project is fine, this project is not fine. So there is immediate, it's tax credit, you take it. And I think if I look at the number, maybe you know the United States better than I do, but I understand that the IRA is working. A lot of companies, also European companies, are going there to invest there. So in my opinion, apart from this local content that I don't like very much because a little bit protectionist, but the way it works, it's very efficient. It's very efficient because you know what. In Europe, Europe have done different things. So we have the Green Deal, we have the CHIPS Act, we have other. But first of all, they are not connected all together. They are not on all the value chain like it is in the US. And as you said, it's a little bit. The political level is deciding, is intermediating the thing. So my opinion is that the most automatic and clear and immediate is the incentive, the better it is. So that's my point.
What's your takes on that?
Well, I think that, how would I say, businesses are much more drawn to an opportunity. That's how we're wired. Than we are motivated to kind of thread through bureaucratic loopholes and rules. And so, if one country thinks, let's say the goal is renewable energy, and one country puts in tax credits for renewable energy R&D, tax credits for renewable energy installations, et cetera, and another country puts in a bunch of rules saying you can only have this kind of power and you can only have this kind of plant and you can, right? Well, guess where the capital's going? The capital's going where the opportunity is, not where the rules are. Yeah. So this is, this experiment's been run. And so, for example, in the US now, there's a 21% corporate tax rate. Germany is almost 50% higher than that. That's a problem. It's not that complicated. Companies, in some ways, companies are very complex, but the economic opportunities are relatively simpler to understand. And so I do think that creating incentives is a much more potent thing than rules. The second thing I would just say is that's maybe on the government side. On the company side, innovation is sort of an instrument for all seasons. If you've got the same technology as your competitors, then you're competing on price. If you've got the best technology, you have a different opportunity. And so I think there's the leading countries and the leading companies are going with incentives, positive opportunity, and innovation. So I would stick with it.
Before I come to you, I just want to say one thing. I mean, I'm very much aware that we have a very distinguished audience here, so we want to get your questions onto the stage. This is the first set of not behind closed doors with so many CEOs, so please come to this speaker's corner here. The gentleman will give you a microphone, and I would love to bring your questions into this conversation. And Roland, please, I would love you to tell us the example about the global gateway that we discussed.
Oh, well, very quickly on the former question. I would answer it in 3 dimensions. Number one, a government has to decide on critical infrastructure. What is it? And have your hands on. I mean, communication, energy, and transport. I mean, and here we have a discussion. You have to be damn sure that this is up and running in all cases. So
and it has to be practical.
Absolutely.
It can't be based in dreams.
No, but it has to be in a way that you say what kind of technology you allow to go in order to be setting safe, first point. Second point, what a government has to do is talking about dependencies, which are critical. Let's meet critical materials, for example, raw materials on the one side, or let's take semiconductors. Do we want to have a dependency on these core technologies? And here, I believe the government, if you have dependency where a company cannot pull it off alone, let's say securing, for example, raw material for whatever stuff you have. I mean, none of the automotive can do it alone, not Siemens, nobody. So we have to get together and secure it. And semiconductor, if we have made a mistake in the past, so somebody has to stimulate it. And I think it's right so to put money in it. You cannot do it for everything. You have to be very, very careful. And then don't do it for commodities. Don't do it for commodities where you can source in different places. That's fine. And then the last point is, and this is now industrial policy, a government has to decide where is our USP? Where's our role in the market in order to develop a proper economy, which is growing in GDP while using less resources? And this is more about creating an industry-friendly or innovation-friendly environment to prosper. So these are the 3 dimensions I would put in place. So, well.
Can I pick up with you there? Yeah?
No, just reacting to that, I think on the dependency issues, of course, that is becoming very important. One interesting question is also, you don't want dependency either as a company. So I think the government should take into account also how much self-interest you have. I guess the answer would be it's not enough because you alone, maybe you can't do it, or because you don't want to depend on a monopoly either as a company. So I think you also have an interest not being dependent and need to work together, and maybe the government needs to put a bit more regulation and coordination on it to extend on the natural dependency you would have as a company. Maybe we were relying too much on the first one before, and now we're in a different world and government needs to be more active. I think on the incentives, I think what Michelle was saying yesterday, and I think what worries me is there's positive and negative incentives. The US is all or subsidies or taxes, if you want. And we are very much in Europe, not on the positive side, but that's your point, but on the negative, so the ETS trading system, that's a tax, for example. So we are more on the negative side. US is more on the positive side, which is bad, as you say, for Europe. The second problem, however, is also that in terms of the way we are administering it, we are doing it through the state aid rules, which are very complicated. We're discussing also with Edi Rama today for Albania, whereas the US is doing it very easily just with a simple tax credit. So both of these whammies, I think, hurt to some extent Europe. And then on top of it, we also often regulate things. Actually, that's a question we could be asking also the next distinguished speaker, actually. And not even going through the market, not positive or negative, but actually regulate things, not in letting the market decide, which is a third whammy, I think, for Europe. So I think
probably
difficult.
As Mario Draghi said, we would need a kind of fiscal union to finance, not to finance, from the northern countries, the poor, stupid, the southern countries. I'm kidding, of course, but to put together a fiscal union and invest in the big projects. Right? That's probably what this is my opinion, because on the energy transition.
This is very Italian.
No, it's not only Italian. It's also France.
She did say in advance that
it's also France. It's other. But
that's right.
It's but it's not because I think just let me say this because I think it's important. In the past, the idea was let's make a kind of fiscal union to redistribute money from the northern country to the southern country. This is not what Europe needs. I don't think this is the real things. Is that now we have big things coming from outside, right? We have digital, we have energy transition. So probably if only Germany or only another Sweden go on with that, and the other countries don't go on that. But this is also for defense. At the end, Europe will not have a strong position. But I don't want to open this. It's a very difficult position, but it's not me. It's Mario Draghi, so it's not.
But, and forgive me as the sort of non-European here, but it wouldn't occur to me that the answer would be fiscal union to this particular problem, because, for example, if you look at American states. Some of them are very strong in one industry, and another is very strong in another, which is also true in Europe. And so, if you see a strategic deficiency, I don't see why one European state can't tackle that.